In the first 3 budget 2 tier 1 deck videos, people have asked for Bant Spirits and how do you build a Spirits deck and then make it into a competitive Spirits deck. So let's do a deep dive, real full-on budget deck into Spirits, and then how do we upgrade it into a full-on competitive tier 1 Spirits deck. Welcome back to Giant Monster Games. My name is Adrian. Today on Budget 2 Tier 1, we're going to be looking at Spirits, blue-white Spirits, and then we're going to make it into Bant Spirits, which is blue, white, and green. This is a Budget 2 Tier 1 series where I show you a deck such as this $100 or 55 tick budget Spirits list, and then I show you how to upgrade it into the Tier 1 version of the deck, which is going to be rolling in at $1,134 or 445 ticks if you're playing on MTGO. Additionally, I'm going to be showing you exactly what to take out and what to put in so you can actually upgrade this deck from the budget deck into the tier 1 deck. I'm going to go tier 1 like this, and just to be clear, tier 1 does not mean it is the best, fastest, most aggressive, best deck in Modern right now. It literally just means it is an extremely popular deck, because Bant Spirits is an extremely popular deck right now, making up I think 5% of the meta. It makes up a huge percentage of it. So that's what tier 1 means. It does not mean that it is the best deck. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 does not mean it is better in any specific way other than it is the most popular deck being played right now, which does mean it is usually going to be a good deck because a lot of people are playing it. But enough with this talking and explaining what tiers are. Let's actually jump into the actual deck. Our first 2 cards are going to be Drogskol Captain and Supreme Phantom. Yes, this is a Spirit tribal deck, so we do want some Spirit Lords. That is basically what both of these guys are doing. Drogskol Captain also gives our other Spirits Hexproof, which is going to be really, really fun when our opponent tries to blow stuff up. Thank you for all the fast removal in Modern right now. We don't really care with this Spirits deck. Because this is the budget version of this deck, we also have favorable winds to help make all of our creatures a little bit bigger so we can push through in an aggro wave if we need to, even though the budget version of this deck is actually a little bit more of a control deck or a little bit more of a control shell. What do I mean by that? Well, the next 2 cards we have is Mausoleum Wanderer and Spell Queller. Both of these cards are allowing us to counter spells technically. So Mausoleum Wanderer is a 1-drop for a 1/1 flyer, which also has some cool abilities. Whenever another spirit enters the battlefield under our control, Mausoleum Wanderer gets +1/+1 till end of turn, so we can use it as a beater if we are playing a bunch of spirits earlier on before we actually go to combat phase. Additionally, it also has a very cool ability. It has Sacrifice Mausoleum Wanderer, counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays X, where X is Mausoleum Wanderer's power. So we can use it as a soft counter against certain removal spells usually, but against Storm and a couple other decks, instant and sorceries can be a pain in our butt, and this guy allows us to stop them, or at least make it so they have to second guess themselves. Now, Spell Queller, which we're only running 3 of because it is really expensive, is probably the best spirit in the entire deck because it allows us to be a really fun control deck, or fun for us, not so fun for our opponent. Spell Queller is, when it enters the battlefield, you may exile target spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. And then when Spell Queller leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner may cast that spell without paying its mana cost. Now, to be clear for anyone that is maybe new to Magic or is not as familiar with all of the rules, when you cast anything, it is currently a spell. When it is on the stack and is middle of being cast, it is a spell. So it could be a creature, it could be an enchantment, an artifact, not land. Land you do not cast, you just play it, it just comes into play. But everything else is cast and is a spell while it is being cast. So if your opponent is playing a creature, bam, you can counter that spell because it is a spell as long as it is still on the stack. It is a little bit of a weird thing. You need to understand this about Magic because it is how you play and get the most value out of Spell Queller. Now, what else do we have that is control-y and spirit-y? Well, we have Rattlechains, Remorseful Cleric, and Selfless Spirit. Rattlechains also has flash, it has flying. When it enters the battlefield, target spirit gains hexproof until end of turn, and we may cast spirits as though they have flash. So, as you could probably see from this exact situation, we can make it so our opponent isn't going to be able to target something. If they do decide we're going to blow up our Drogskol Captain, we can just be like, hey, check it out. You're not going to do that anymore because it has hexproof. What are you going to do now? Additionally, we can play other spirits with flash, which is really, really fun because we can also play something like Selfless Spirit, which we may sacrifice it to give all of our creatures indestructible, preventing board wipes, preventing things being destroyed. Obviously, exile effects don't get affected by this because they just go away, they don't get destroyed. And then Remorseful Cleric is a budget card we're putting in here. It's not a cheap budget card, but it is a budget card, and it actually helps the budget deck go against some of the faster graveyard decks. So Hollow One, Vengevine, Dredge, because we need a way of getting rid of graveyards, and having some main board cards are going to allow us to go up against those decks because you see a lot of them in the meta right now. So Remorseful Cleric is a personal, Adrian decides to put it in here as a meta call to help deal with those decks, because this version of Spirits isn't fast enough to deal with those decks, where this card is allowing us to get there. So that is really all it's doing. It's just allowing us to have on-board main deck graveyard hate. Next, we have a couple more actual control cards. We have Nebelgast Herald and Reflector Mage, which is not a spirit, but it is blue and white, and it is really good. So Nebelgast Herald, when it comes into play, we may tap target creature our opponent controls, anything we play with flash on our opponent's turn, and just tap down their stuff. And then Reflector Mage is really amazing, because we basically get to bounce a creature to our opponent's hand, and then they cannot play it next turn. So again, against a lot of the decks that I've just described, like Hollow One and Dredge and other stuff, specifically Dredge, this card's gonna be really good for just completely throwing those decks off tempo, saying, hey, check it out, let's not do what you're doing. I would like to win by controlling the board a little bit. And then the last two non-land cards we have Celestial Flare and Unsubstantiate. So Celestial Flare is allowing us to technically get rid of creatures and when they're attacking or blocking. Obviously this could be upgraded to a better card, but is what we're going to be running. And then Unsubstantiate allows us to soft counter a spell or return a creature to its owner's hand, which again, something we want to do. We want to put our opponent off tempo until we actually get everything up and running. This is going to allow us to get there. As far as our mana base is concerned, we have Moorland Haunt. So this is a really cool card. So one, it comes in and produces colorless mana, which doesn't really matter. It literally does not matter at all. But we may pay a white and a blue, exile a creature from our graveyard. So we have no way of getting stuff back from the graveyard. So whatever, we'll get rid of stuff out of our graveyard, and then put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Again, we are a spirit tribal deck, and we also have favorable winds. So a flying creature is a very good idea. Usually we can get this off for, getting a 3/3 into play with flying. It's gonna be fantastic because, check it out, Modern doesn't have a lot of ways of dealing with flying creatures other than just the way of dealing with creatures in general, which is usually gonna help you out in the long run. As far as non-basic lands, we have Port Town and Prairie Stream, giving us our mana base fixing for blue and white, because blue and white are both very, very needed in this deck, so we have a way of getting around that. And then we have 6 islands and 6 plains, making up the rest of the mana base, because we need basic lands as well, I guess. Now let's jump over to the sideboard. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'll give you a quick rundown in case you are going to take this deck out to an FNM. We have Azorius Herald helping us with burn mostly, and he is a spirit, so we can have him come in and do cool spirit-y things, such as get bigger and attack our opponent's face. Then we have Celestial Purge, which is dealing with red and black permanents if we need to, Dampening Sphere, slowing down decks that are going to be really fast, such as Storm, Disenchant, dealing with largely Lantern control because we have no way of getting around Lantern control, Dispel, dealing with instances speed stuff, Eidolon of Rhetoric, again dealing with decks that are going to be playing multiple spells in a turn, again Storm, Kami of Ancient Law, destroy target enchantment, you can figure out what that's for, Kami of False Hope, you may sacrifice it to prevent all combat damage, so if you're going against a wide deck, that's a really good one for it. Negate, again a counter, and then Tormod Script, again better ways of dealing with graveyard stuff because we are a little bit slow against the decks that are using the graveyard really effectively. And that is the entire deck. If you want to pick this deck up in paper, or any deck on the channel for that matter, go over to Flipside Gaming, use promo code Giant Monster Games to get 10% off your online purchase. Or if you want to buy this deck on MTGO, there's a link below to Card Hoarder where you can quickly pick up this entire deck fast and easy. Also, both of these help out the channel directly, so I can keep making videos just like this for you guys. Now let's take a look at the non-budget version of this list, which is going to be a Bant Spirits list, but I'm going to talk about the cards that you could upgrade and still keep this deck as a blue-white deck until you have to want to splash into green to make it a Bant list. To start out with, we have Selfless Spirit and Spell Queller. They're running 3 Selfless Spirits and 4 Spell Quellers in this deck. Pretty easy upgrade because they are really good for just putting other decks off tempo. You obviously can figure out what this is going on for. Next, and this is actually a huge upgrade, it's going to be Aether Vial and Phantasmal Image. Usually you want to put these in together, but you don't necessarily have to. Aether Vial, obviously you can play stuff at instant speed, and you get a lot more tempo because you could play without having to actually have all of the mana. You could obviously have 2 counters on Aether Vial and play a 2-drop, and then still spend all your mana to play another Spirit on top of all that. Also, you get to play stuff on your opponent's turn, which is really good. Phantasmal Image is should be called Phantasmal fantastic image, I guess, because it comes into play and then it gets to copy a creature on the battlefield, except as an illusion. So you can basically counter your Spell Queller, you can counter one of your lords, you can you can copy these things. Not counter, Adrian, it is copy. You get to copy these things, so it's a really good way of just getting versions 5 and 6 and 7 of any of these cards, which you can figure out what it's for. It's really to get more consistency out of the cards that you already have in play and get more value out of them. So that is the whole reason why you play Phantasmal Image. Path to Exile is obviously just an upgrade because it is better removal. Next to the green cards, Noble Hierarch and Collected Company are really the only two cards we're splashing for green. Noble Hierarch is giving two things. One, it is giving us mana ramp because it can tap for mana. Also, it gives us Exalted. So if we're only attack win with one creature, that creature is going to get +1/+1, as long as it attacks by itself, which is not the end of the world for our deck. We can easily swing in with one creature, especially over top of everything, getting a little bit of extra damage in. Noble Hierarch, fantastic. Really expensive though. And then Collected Company, you can guess that all of our stuff is 3 or less, so Collected Company, really good at just instant speed, throwing in a whole bunch of stuff. And then talking about the actual mana base upgrades, starting out, let's talk about some lands that you can put in if you are going to keep this as blue-white for the time being. We have Flooded Strand, Hollowed Fountain, and Cavern of Souls. Don't need to explain these cards too much, you've seen them in a lot of other videos. Flooded Strand and Hollowed Fountain is your fetch shock combo, and then Cavern of Souls, we name a creature type, in this case it's going to be spirits, and then our spirits can't be countered, which is really nice. Obviously the numbers you see on the screen right now are for the upgraded version of the deck. If you are keeping with blue-white, you can always put more than 3 Flooded Strands, 1 Hollowed Fountain, 1 Cavern of Souls. That is up to you. I'm going to leave that in your capable hands. The next cards, we have Misty Rainforest and Windswept Heath. They are fetch lands if you're going to go fetch up stuff. This is going to be getting into the splashing of green territory. Splashing of green, we're going to have Temple Garden and Breeding Pool, obviously producing some green and white and blue in a variety of combinations. And then lastly, we have Botanical Sanctum and Horizon Canopy. Botanical Sanctum is literally just giving us green and blue because those are the two most important colors in the upgrade version of the deck, as we want to play Noble Hierarch on turn 1, and then we need green so we can do Collected Company ASAP. And then Horizon Canopy, you've probably seen it because it keeps coming up in like every deck I've been making lately. It's essentially you get to sacrifice it and draw a card if you get to the late game, otherwise you get to make green and white mana. It's a really good card. It's really expensive though. That's the only downside about Horizon Canopy. And now it is time to talk about what we are going to be upgrading when we take out cards from the budget deck to put in cards for the non-budget version of the deck. First of all, we have Spell Queller and Selfless Spirit. I did mention this in the upgraded version of the deck. We want to be taking out our Nebelgast Heralds because they're just not quite good enough. Obviously, 1 more Spell Queller and 2 more Selfless Spirits in this case. Next, we want to be putting in Phantasmal Image and Noble Hierarch. Remorseful Cleric, as much as I love it for getting rid of stuff that is currently in the meta, just not quite good enough. And then Rattlechains as well can be pulled out. If you're going to be putting in Noble Hierarch, you need to be upgrading the mana base, so keep this in mind. We're going to take out 2 of the Celestial Flares for 2 Path to Exiles. Path to Exile is just all around better, so why not throw that in? And then, carrying on with the instant speed awesomeness, Collected Companies and Aether Vials. We're going to be taking out the last Celestial Flare and a variety of our other non-creatures, such as Unsubstantiate and Favorable Winds. Again, as soon as we get Collected Company and Aether Vial, we can actually start playing much faster, so we don't really need the kind of a little bit of a control package slash make our creatures a little bit bigger to hopefully they last a little bit longer, which is why you're going to be taking out all these cards. And then, if we want to be putting in Cavern of Souls, Flooded Strand, Hollowed Fountain, or Windswept Heath, we can actually take out in place the Port Towns and the Prairie Streams. All of these cards are just better versions of these, so you may as well just swap them 1 for 1. And then, if you're going to splash green, because you're going to be playing some of the green cards, you can put in Botanical Sanctum, Breeding Pool, Misty Rainforest, Temple Garden, taking out just plains and islands. Nothing too amazing in that one. And then the last 2 cards, we need to put in another forest. We actually need to put in a forest as well, just because it is better to have at least some basic lands, at least 1 of each, so you can fetch it if something does get pathed or ghost quartered. Always a good call. So Forest, Horizon Canopy. We can be taking out 1 of our Moorland Haunt because we don't need 2. 1 is all we really need. Obviously, in the budget version of the deck, we had 2 because we want to get a couple more spirits. And then Islands and Plains get taken out of the deck. That is the entire deck tech. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos just like this. And now let's go watch me play some games with this spirit deck, both budget and a less budget version of it. Maybe not the full pimped out version of it. but a better version. Until next time, though, again, my name is Adrian, this has been Giant Monster Games. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to game like a giant monster. I would like to throw a huge shout out to all of the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome and helping make videos like this possible on the channel. Thanks for being a backer. I seriously can't thank you guys enough. You are so freaking awesome.